Some people learn their lesson the easy way, but the HOA in my neighborhood insisted on learning it the hard way. They mocked, threatened, fined, and finally bulldozed my so-called ugly dam. They thought they were ridding themselves of an eyesore. But what they really did was tear down the only barrier standing between their million-dollar homes and Mother Nature's fury. By the time the water rose and swallowed their luxury neighborhood, it was far too late to undo what they were. Head done, my name is Robert, and I've lived on this property for over 25 years. Long before the HOA even existed, this was farmland and marshland. My grandfather built the original dam to manage the seasonal flooding from the creek that ran behind the property. It wasn't fancy, it was built from reinforced concrete, thick timber beams, and packed earth, but it worked. That dam kept our side of the valley dry for nearly 70 years. Over time, the area transformed. Developers came in, bulldozed the farmlands, and threw up million-dollar homes. They marketed it as a luxury lakeside community. Ironically, that lake was just the reservoir my grandfather's dam created. Without it, the land would revert to a swampy floodplain. When the developers wrapped up, they handed everything over to the HOA. That's when the trouble began at first. I ignored the HOA, I wasn't part of their community, and my land was technically outside their jurisdiction. But my dam was visible from their walking trails. And the new residents didn't like what they saw. It looks like something out of a horror movie. Why can't he build something more modern? An eyesore like that lowers property values. The HOA president, a woman named Linda, was the loudest critic. She had a sharp bob haircut, oversized sunglasses, and the kind of permanent scowl you could see from a mile away. She marched onto my property one afternoon, clipboard in hand, and announced, "Your structure violates community aesthetic standards." Laughed. "Lady, this dam is older than your entire subdivision. You don't have jurisdiction over my land?" She didn't like that answer. From then on, she made it her personal mission to get rid of my dam. The HOA started small nasty letters, veiled threats about legal action, and offers to buy me out. I ignored them all. Then they escalated. Someone spray-painted Tier IT down across the side of the dam. I installed cameras, but, of course, nobody was ever caught. They filed complaints with the county, claiming the dam was unsafe. County inspectors came, checked it thoroughly, and confirmed it was structurally sound. The HOA fumed. But Linda wasn't done. She rallied the neighborhood with scare tactics. She claimed the dam was a ticking time bomb that could collapse at any moment and drown them all. Ironically, she wasn't entirely wrong, but the danger only came if the dam was destroyed. One summer, after weeks of drought, the water level was low. The dam wasn't holding back much at all. That's when Linda made her move. I woke up to the roar of machinery. Bulldozers, backhoes. A demolition crew was tearing into the dam. I sprinted out shouting, but I was met with a wall of HOA members standing smugly across the property line. Linda folded her arms. "Court order," she said, waving a document. It turned out she'd found a sympathetic judge who, after hearing exaggerated testimony about public danger, granted temporary permission to dismantle the dam. I tried to fight it. But by the time I got legal help, the heavy equipment had already ripped the structure apart. Decades of careful engineering gone in a single afternoon. The water that remained in the reservoir began trickling out, soaking the ground. The HOA cheered like they'd won a war. Linda smirked at me as she left. "Now you can finally stop being stubborn and let this place become a real community asset." I just shook my head. They had no idea what they had done. At first, everything seemed fine. The reservoir drained slowly, leaving behind mudflats. The HOA announced plans to beautify the area with parks, trails, and even a little amphitheater. They patted themselves on the back, but by fall, the rains came. Without the dam regulating flow, the creek surged out of control, water carved. Deep channels through the mud, tearing away soil. Backyards that once overlooked a calm lake now backed onto a widening swamp. The HOA tried sandbags, then pumps. Thing worked. Every storm left the ground more saturated, the water creeping closer. By winter, the mosquitoes arrived, clouds of them. The stagnant swamp became a breeding ground. Residents complained of bites, fevers, and unbearable stench. Property values plummeted. The final blow came in spring. That year, we had record rainfall. The creek swelled into a raging torrent. Without the dam, there was nothing to slow it down. I watched from my porch as water poured over the HOA's manicured lawns, swallowing fences and patios. The million-dollar houses stood like islands in a rising swamp. Neighbors scrambled, trying to pile sandbags and dig trenches, but it was useless. The water table had shifted, and the land was reverting to its natural state, a floodplain. The county declared the area a disaster zone. Insurance companies refused to cover the damage, citing acts of negligence. Lawsuits flew back and forth, but the culprit was clear. The HOA had demolished the only thing keeping their homes safe. And Linda? She vanished. Rumor had it she sold her house before the worst of the flooding and skipped town. Meanwhile, my property stayed dry. See, when they demolished the old dam, I had quietly reinforced my own section of land with levees and drainage ditches. I knew what was coming. The HOA begged me for help. They offered money, favors, even apologies. But there was nothing I could do. They hadn't just broken my dam, they had broken the entire balance of the watershed eventually. Many families abandoned the neighborhood altogether. Foreclosures stacked up. What was once a luxury lakeside community became a ghost town surrounded by stagnant water and overgrown reeds. And me? I just kept on living the way I always had. My land, my family's history, still stood strong while theirs sank into the swamp they had created. Looking back, I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. But they brought this upon themselves. They thought they were above nature, above history, above simple common sense. They thought tearing down an ugly dam would make their lives prettier. Instead, it destroyed everything they had, and me. I learned something too. Best revenge isn't doing anything at all. Sometimes you just let people dig their own graves, sink their own million-dollar homes into the mud. This story is just the beginning. There is so much more ahead. Subscribe to the channel to join me on this journey.